Are you enjoying your summer but missing your weekly dose of Varsity 360? Well, I've got good news. We're back with the 2014 Football Preview Edition, and it starts right now. Hi there, folks. I'm Mark Coleman from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, V2SN, and this is Varsity 360's Gridiron Report, our 2014 Football Preview Edition. Sure is good to be back with these folks and good to be able to chat sports with my good friends from the Freelance Star Sports Department. And I've got a full house here tonight, so really happy to have that. It's been a while since seeing these guys, so let's introduce them here. Starting at the end, we have Assistant Sports Editor Justin Rice.
Had a good summer, Mark, I hope?
Had a great summer. Hope you did too.
Welcome back.
You're looking awfully awfully spiffy there.
I needed to find a way to take some years off. That seemed to be the easiest answer.
Mission accomplished there.
There you go.
We have sports reporter T. Nathan. Can I still call you T. Nathan Warters? Nathan Warters.
Call me whatever you want, Mark.
Mr. Warters, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good weekend?
Yeah.
Good weekend? Good summer? I don't know.
It's always good.
It's always good. It's always good. You've been putting some miles on, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good deal. Sports reporter extraordinaire, Taft Coghill Jr. Taft, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Been a while.
Yes,
you had a good summer?
Yes, sir.
Good. And how about this? We have, making his first appearance on our show, the sports editor for the Freelance Star, Mr. Steve DeShazo. Steve, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. Well, good. I hope you enjoy it. Hope you like it enough to come back. How about that?
Okay.
That's not setting the bar very high, I don't think, but
I see these guys all the time, so you know.
Yeah, you don't realize how lucky you are.
You're right, I don't.
Well, guys, football is almost here. Pretty good season last year. One of the best seasons, arguably one of the best seasons in the area. Didn't end with a championship for any of the teams, but not without some significant drama along the way. So maybe 2014 holds some excitement as well.
Maybe. I think there are definitely teams that you could look at and say, yeah, if things go right, I think there are those teams out there again this year. Gosh, it doesn't seem like it's time yet. Is it really time already?
Oh, I've been waiting for this for a while. It's definitely time. It's definitely time. Well, why don't we roll up our sleeves and jump right into it. And let's start with Conference 4. And let's start with a team that provided a whole lot of excitement last year. They made it all the way to the state semifinals. And that is Colonial Forge. Nathan, I think you've been taking a look at them this preseason.
Yeah, I had a chance to go and visit practice, earlier this week, and they're not really resting on their laurels. It's not, it's not one of those things where they're saying, well, that was our good year and we're done. They're definitely gearing up for another run at possibly making it to the state championship game. Got a lot of talent back, led by Gary Jennings, their quarterback, who's also going to start at cornerback. He's a game changer. He's got several offers for major Division I schools, so he's going to lead the way for them. Got a lot of talent on their line, got a lot of talent back on defense, so it looks like they're primed for another really good season.
Can their defense be as good as it was last year, do you think?
In terms of big plays, it's going to be really hard to replace the guys they lost, particularly Daniel and David Izagu, but they have a lot of athletes, and I think when Gary Jennings is leading your defense as well as your offense, you can always count on something good happening. And they return, I don't have specific numbers in terms of starters, but they do return a good number on defense. And, I think they could be a big play defense again.
Is Jennings going to be exclusively a quarterback this year?
No, he's going to do it all. He's going to play quarterback, start. He's going to play cornerback, start. And he's also going to return kicks, which is kind of something that you don't – in this area, a lot of the best quarterbacks are solely playing quarterback and nothing else. But, Bill Brown told me that he's the best player that they have, and they're going to ride him as far as they can. And he even said, if he gets hurt, I'm going to take a lot of criticism, but he's our guy, and we need him to succeed on both sides of the ball.
They've got a pretty good schedule this season as well, similar to last year's. I think they're playing some pretty good schools from Northern Virginia. I don't remember exactly who else they've got.
Same schedule they had last year.
Pretty heavy schedule there.
Same schedule they had last year. They're going to be playing Briarwoods at home. They got Hermitage, Highland Springs. I think I think they said it was I think Bill Brown said it was the toughest schedule he'd ever had. And he's been this is his 31st year as a head coach. I don't think it's going to change this year. I think all those teams are tough again, and they're going to get tested, but they have the talent to get through it.
And I think that last year, that's kind of what spurred them, was they played some good competition early on.
Right.
Got them ready for the playoff run, and of course, when they moved Jennings to quarterback later in the year, that kind of gave them the impetus too. But they were tested early. They will be again this year, and I think that's the way Bill Brown wants it. I mean, kind of hard to argue with what he's done.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. No doubt. So the Eagles look like they're reloaded. Watch out area. Staying in Conference 4, Riverbend. They've got a new offense that they've installed, and they've got some high hopes there with the Bears.
Yeah, they've been kind of building up to this season for a couple of years now. They were really good 2 years ago at the freshman and the JV levels. I think both of those teams went undefeated. They got a lot of those guys up now. You bring back Zach Sims at running back. I guess the question is, how much are they going to use him at running back now that they've installed this new wide open offensive system?
Yeah, similar to the University of Oregon type system. So
yeah.
I think it promises to be exciting to watch. We'll see how many points it's able to produce, but that's probably what's going to dictate how their season goes.
I think the good news with the Bears, the schedule, the early part of the schedule has a lot of winnable games, just like it did last year. They started 5-0, then they end 5-5.
Right.
So I think for the Bears, I think nobody will be surprised to see them start 4-1, 5-0 again. What are they going to do with that second half? You got to win some of those Commonwealth District games, and that's how you become a playoff team. Yeah.
I think Coach DeMarco has preached that into his players. They recognize that the front half of the schedule is a little bit softer than the back half, but they're focused on some of those teams. They've got rest assured they've got some of those dates circled, so they're looking forward to that.
And I don't think that some of the teams they're playing in the second half are going to be quite as good this year as last year. We'll get to a couple of those teams, Brooke Point and a couple others, with some big turnover. So some of those games may be a little more winnable.
That's certainly possible, absolutely. Yeah. Well, one of the teams that they had trouble with, actually the last couple of seasons they've had trouble, is Stafford. What do you know about the Indians?
Big, very big. Probably the biggest offensive line in the area. They average about 270 across the front.
My
of course,
goodness.
it helps when you've got Josh Ball, who's 315 and only a junior, and already getting a lot of college scholarship offers from ACC schools.
Right.
They're gonna run the ball. They tried to throw it a little more last year. They're going to run the ball. Garrett Kropp is back, quarterback. And
Zevin Hawley at running back he's capable for sure.
And they're going to run more option, which they used to do when Torrey Smith was there and some of these other guys. So, they're going to, in a era where a lot of teams are throwing the ball more, they're going to go a little more smash mouth and try to run the ball. Defensively, they're fairly strong. Caden Lewis back at linebacker, Kyle Shiflett at safety, guys who've been there. Josh Ball's also going to play defense for the first time. So and Stephen Harris, who can play both ways, defensive line and fullback. So they're much more experienced. They played a lot of young guys last year, went through some real growing pains. Chad Lewis, thinks they're going to be better this year. Whether that shows up in the record,
I think a lot of Stafford, they just got to finish some games.
Yeah.
I think they played some games tough, and maybe they could have been a little better than the record showed last year. They just got to finish some of those games off. Try to do it that way.
Yeah. Well, that's a look at the 6A teams, Conference 4 from the area. Let's move now to Division 5 and take a look at another team that had a pretty good season last year, North Stafford. Nathan, you've been taking a look at these guys.
Yeah, I think their mantra for the last 3 years has been next man up. They've just reloaded after losing a lot of talent, and they've really done the unthinkable and going to 3 straight state semifinal games. And unfortunately, they haven't won any of them. They've lost all 3 by really heartbreaking fashion. But there's no reason to believe that they don't have the talent to do it again. I think it's going to be harder this year because a lot of the players they graduated were really cornerstone type players. I'm talking about guys like Joey Sly, who was kind of the heartbeat of that team last year. Jaywan Horton, the defensive end. Von Purvis, who rushed for 2,000 yards. In their favor, they bring back 2 quarterbacks with starting experience. Jalen Surratt, who started in the playoffs the last 2 years. Pat Ayala, who started a bunch of games last year up until the playoffs.
As a freshman.
The thing is that neither of them are going to play quarterback, at least not to start the season. Joe Mangano, the coach there, told me that Jimmy Edwards, a sophomore, is going to be the guy they start off with. Now this could change, obviously, but they feel confident with him at quarterback, and they want to move Ayala to middle linebacker, which is the quarterback of the defense, essentially. He's the smart guy, and the scrimmages they've really liked what they've seen out of Ayala. So big question for them is their line play. Mangano's an offensive line, defensive line guy. He's an in-the-trenches guy. So he's trying to figure out what he's going to do with those guys right now. If they can get, those big guys up front to perform, they're going to find skill guys to make plays. So I think the big question is, how good are they going to be in the trenches? They've proven to be good in years past. I have no reason to think they're not going to be good again this year.
Yeah, the line play was where I would go with North Stafford is what do they have left up there, and how's that group going to be? I know North Stafford has athletes to replace backs and things like that. So what are they going to get up front, those 10 guys?
Are they looking at being more of the running team they were toward the end of the year, or more of what they started out with last year?
Mangano told me they're going to try to be a multiple offense. They're going to try to do a lot of different things. I really think that he prefers to just punch guys in the mouth and run the football. Do they have that ability? Like Justin said, you have to have the guys up front to have that offense. And they graduated a lot of guys from the front. The good thing is they have some experience, some guys who started. They just don't have the amount of experience as the guys they had last year had. So
Right.
It'll be interesting. I know they've had some really good scrimmages in the preseason, so I think they've been encouraged by what they've seen. And I think they would prefer to be a physical team. So we'll see if that's what their identity is early on.
How much guys? So you've made trips around the area and seen a bunch of practices, maybe several scrimmages as well. But do you really get a sense of what the team's going to be from these? It's kind of hard to get a sense of even the flow of a game in a scrimmage is not the same. When the lights are on and the game counts, you're wearing your nice uniform. There's some kids that find holes that weren't finding holes, in practice. I mean, it's really interesting to see who comes alive on game night.
Well, I was in Louisa today, and Mark Fisher threw out the classic cliche. It's not what we are today; it's what we are in week 8 and week 9, and what we become. North Stafford last year, they were good all year, but they weren't at the end of the season what they thought they were going to be. They were thinking they're going to have Ayala. They thought they were going to throw it a little more. They didn't become that team. They still were very good, but these teams are going to evolve, and certainly you'll see that.
And I think one thing you'll see, especially with the expanded playoffs now, is you don't have to be good right now.
Yeah.
You just need to be good in October and into November.
Yeah.
And a lot of these teams that will have young players are going to have a month and a half and 6-7 games to be good, and then to get into the playoffs and then see what you can do. Because we've seen teams that were not seeded really high make playoffs runs.
Great segue, because North Stafford was kind of one of those teams. I mean, they were not the class even of Conference 15. They lost a bit of a heartbreaker to Massaponax during the regular season, which forced them to actually have to go to Ponax in the playoffs, and they handled Massaponax in the playoffs. I mean, they really, that second game didn't have much resemblance to that first game. So it is interesting to see the progression of a team over the course of a season. And speaking of Ponax, I guess you've seen them this past this summer as well.
Yeah, and you talk about a team going through a rebuilding phase, or reloading phase at least. 24 seniors from last year's team that went 12-0, won the
impressive group of seniors too.
Yes, and they did it without Vinny Mahota for most of the year last year too. So that was even more impressive. They've only got a couple of guys back. Gus Little is a nice guy to build around. The linebacker who also can play some tight end for them. But because they do something nobody else does, running that triple option, they're still hard to prepare for, and they've got good athletes. They've got Joy Bendon now, who played some safety for them last year, is now going to be their quarterback. They're high on him. They think he can do things like Alfonso Trice did for 3 years.
Right.
Mahota's younger brother Louis is a sophomore, going to start both ways for him at nose guard and center. They still have athletes to get the ball to, so they're still going to do what they do, and their kids come through the JV's team, still running that same offense, and so when they step in and to the varsity level, they know what they're doing. As you said, the lights are on, and it's a different different thing when you get to the varsity on Friday nights, but they're still going to be good and they're still going to be difficult to prepare for, especially on a short week.
I think 24 seniors, whatever. What was the last bad Massaponax team? When was the last time they didn't piece something together and were very competitive and a team that you had to prepare for? That never happens. Massaponax will be a good team, a threat, and I think have a good chance to make a run at the playoffs. I haven't seen them one bit. I just have seen them enough years to know that they're going to piece something together.
And you look at the guys they cycled through last year. I mean, they had injury after injury after injury, and they just cycled guys in, and those guys performed. And, of course, a lot of those guys are gone. But I just think that they've established such a precedent program-wise that they've got the skill. And
undefeated regular season.
Yeah, I think 10-0 is tough to do again.
Yes.
But I think we'll be talking about Massaponax become playoff time. Again, sight unseen. Haven't seen them play a game yet.
I'll say this 1-0 may be tough because they start with Cortland, who's going to be a good team. So, and they're not going to, if they lose that game, they're not going to throw in the towel. They'll just keep getting better. They've got, I think, 2,500 yards and 38 rushing touchdowns to replace. Wow. Just looking at last year's stats, but they've got guys, coming through that are ready to step in.
The boss is throwing some stats out here.
Throwing out numbers.
You better keep up,
I am a professional.
You do this for a living.
That makes one of us.
JV over here.
Well, I think we all are in agreement then. There's little doubt that Ponax is not going to be a good team this year. This is Coach Ludden's not going to allow it to happen.
Not going to be a bad team. You said not going to be a good team.
I'm sorry.
That was Mark Roberts,
yes,
everyone.
They're not going to be a bad team.
Did I say board material?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, there you have it. I'm not a professional. What can I say? Let's move on. How about Mountain View, Nathan?
Mountain View, I think, is in a similar position as Massaponax. They've got to replace 17 starters from last year. But talking to those guys over there, they really are relishing kind of that underdog role because they have a lot of athletes. They have a lot of guys who played in really critical situations last year because of injuries and because of a lot of other things. And their biggest plus is they have a 3-year starting quarterback returning in Elijah Burris. And talking to Lou Sorrentino, he went through his laundry list of things he's got to replace, and he goes, "But what am I complaining about? I've got Elijah." And I think that makes a big difference when you have a guy who's as skilled, who knows the offense, and is a leader like he is. And I think they're really encouraged by that. So I could see them being a playoff team again. Like Massaponax, they don't start out with a real easy schedule. They got Varina again at home, and Varina beat them very handily there in Richmond last year. But I feel like this group thinks they have a better chance of winning and competing in that game this year because of the chemistry they have, the athleticism, and Burris is healthy this year. Burris was not healthy at the beginning of the season last year, so they could be a very good team. A lot of teams in this area have to replace a lot of talent. I think that they're kind of in that boat, but I think they're prime. I think they're ready to have a good year.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
If you're going to start with one back, quarterback is pretty good. If we only got one back, quarterback's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a good place to start.
Now, and we can't gloss over the fact that Gordon Collins was one of the best running backs in the area last year. Quentin Gray was one of the best wide receivers in the area. They had, a lot of talent in the secondary they have to replace. You look at their defense, they've got 4 linebackers who are really good. They're really encouraged by. They got 2 returning cornerbacks. That's about the extent of their returners there in Burris. So they're mixing in a lot of new guys, but, Lou Sorrentino's a real, optimistic guy. So I just got a really good feeling by being around him at camp. So I think they feel good about what they have.
And who's to argue? I mean, when you've got a coach who's got that kind of success, you've got a program that has that kind of success. I don't personally buy into the just the carte blanche success breeds success, but there is something to being around winning and developing those kinds of habits and having those kinds of expectations.
Yeah, it does have a snowball effect. I mean, especially when if you're drawing numbers to your practices and those numbers are guys who are 6'4", 200 pounds and athletes, you can turn those guys into football players. You might not be playing them. You might not be winning games early, or you might not be as competitive early as you would be later in the season. I think these guys are going to be good. So,
yeah, I mean, you want to win August 29th or whenever your first game is going to be. But I know every single coach is talking about wanting to be able to practice on Thanksgiving Day, right? So I mean, that's the important part. Winning early is going to get you there, but you still need to be focused more on the getting there, I guess. Let's move on now to Brooke Point. Steve?
Talk about a rebuilding job. And Tommy Buzzo certainly has the pedigree as a coach, did great things at Liberty for a long time, probably a decade, and sent a bunch of kids to Division I colleges. He's taken over a rebuilding job. You know, he's the third head coach in 3 years, so been a lot of turmoil, a lot of turnover there. And he's basically starting from scratch, so it doesn't have a whole lot. Damone Drew, running back, is going to be. You know, they threw the ball a lot the last few years. They're going to go a little more balanced now, and that's the way Buzzo wants it. Drew's going to get the ball a lot. Brock Carnes is going to be their quarterback. He's won the battle there, at least for the opener, it looks like. But there's not a lot of experience on either side of the ball. A couple of guys: Barry Hibner at fullback and linebacker, Jeremy Parrott as a receiver and a defensive back. Among the only guys they've got starting. So Tommy Buzzo was really talking about kind of starting to build as you said, build a philosophy and build, and this is going to be a rebuilding year for them.
Yeah, and I do buy in, by the way, personally, for whoever cares about my personal beliefs, but I do buy into the idea that losing sort of does breed more losing. It's hard to stop the bleeding. It's hard to turn a program around that is. Now, Brooke Point, mind you, it has not been in the doldrums for several years, but you know, they 2-8 last year. They've had a lot of turnover there, so it's challenging.
I'll say this: the talent walks through the door at Brooke Point. We've certainly seen it. We've been around long enough, and I think we've seen it. They're going to get players, and they're going to get athletes. And Buzzo has a track record. He knows what he's doing. You know, if Brooke Point, if this isn't their year will be coming at some point. You know, that's all going to come together. I'm certain.
Well, and speaking of another school that's got some talent, although they haven't been able to turn it into victories, Orange. I mean, this is a school that you've got to believe, Nathan, is going to be able to turn it around eventually.
Yeah, and their coach Keada Malloy was in Buzzo's position last year, and he had the disadvantage of coming in late in the process. Didn't have an off season to work with the kids. Really didn't have a lot of time to really implement all the things that he wanted to do. You know, he talked last year about building a program, discipline, you know, doing all the things that a good program does. And he's got a good track record as a coach. I'm very interested to see what happens this year. This is year 2. He's had an off season. They've got results from last year to build on. They do have a lot of turnover. But a lot of turnover from a team that didn't win a lot, I'm not sure that's going to be such a bad thing. So they could, you know, they have a lot of talent in that area. They have the entire county to draw from. This could be, you know, a stepping stone year for them. And like I said, it'll be very interesting to see how far they come this year.
They have a navigable schedule as well. You know, they can get through and win games, I think, on their schedule and have some success. So, like you said, we're going to win some games this year, and next year we're going to build on that. You know, I think that's probably where Orange is at. And,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's take a look at Division 4, and we'll start in Conference 22 with the King George Foxes. Justin, this was a playoff team last season. What do you think about their chances this year?
I think they can make a lot of noise again this year. You know, King George, on paper, you look at their roster from last year and you think about Corey Henderson and Jordy Estes, and those guys are gone, and that's a big part. And, you know, they lost a lot of other pieces. But I think they can piece it together. They've gone to the single wing, I'm told, exclusively this year. You know, they ran it here and there last year, and I think it was very effective. And I think it's a scheme that even if your talent is not what you want it to be, I think you can still exploit some weaknesses in defenses. And given their schedule and, you know, given the scheme, Jeremy Jack is the offensive coordinator, of course, longtime coach at Colonial Beach, very successful there. I think King George is going to be a team that probably surprises some people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of interesting offensive schemes that can give opponents some fits, Cortland certainly fits into that category. They're returning 3,000-yard rushers. Taft, this is a pretty strong team. I like their chances this year.
Yeah, when you have a scheme that not a lot of people are used to, and that's something you do every single year, similar to Massaponics, is what Steve was talking about earlier. I mean, that can cause a lot of headaches for opposing teams. Then when you have the talent that they have coming back, that just makes for a special season, and that's what Cortland, Coach J.C. Hall, that's what he believes he has in store this year. He believes it can be a special season.
So it's Anton Jenkins, Victor Green, Jabari Allen, and George Cheatham.
Yes, Anton Jenkins is the workhorse. You'll see him going up the middle a lot, and breaking off a lot of long runs. Then you have Cheatham and Victor Green on the outside. They're the other running backs in that system. And Jabari Allen has developed a lot as a quarterback. That's one thing you have to look out for this year. J.C. Hall, he believes that they can throw the ball better than they ever have with the development of Jabari, who's now a junior.
They're going to see a lot of guys in the box, so he should have some chances.
It'll be the only reason to throw the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 3,000. You're returning 3,000 yards worth of running.
Yeah, but they like to hit that big play. They run the crisscross or the scissors play out of the wing tee, and they like to, bore you to death running the buck sweep, and then all of a sudden they're gonna bootleg back off of that and try to throw it deep and hit that connection. They certainly. They're sneaky deep, I think, is the answer.
Yeah, they lost Kyle Talley was their big play receiver, but Nick Grant and also Jeremy Hokerson, look out for those two as big play threats.
Okay. Meanwhile, let's turn now to Chancellor. A pretty disappointing season for the Chargers last year, Justin.
Yeah, but the thing with the Chargers is, they were young last year. They're going to be young again this year. Now they're going to be a little young, still with a little more experience. It's still the same guys coming back who are still now sophomore. I think 8's the number. They had 8 freshmen that got starts for them last year because they're a little more experienced. And sometimes you're going to hit that in a program where we've got to reload. We've got to take a couple of years. I think that's what Chancellor's going through. Not as bad as they were last year. Probably not their state title year this year, but I think definitely improved.
Somewhere between 1-9 and state championship.
Somewhere between 1-9 and 10-0, I think, is the answer in the regular season.
They're
see, this is the thing about Justin. He goes out on limbs, but they're really big limbs.
Yeah, just a little bit on Chancellor. Their coaching staff, they will admit that a lot of those guys might not have been ready last year, but you get some of those guys as sophomores, particularly the quarterback, Jason Brown, and he's looked like he's developed a lot. And also they have a big play wide receiver who's going to open some eyes, I think, 6'5", sophomore E.J. Scott. So.
Wow.
Well, if you're going to have a 4-year starting quarterback, first you got to have a freshman starting quarterback and a sophomore starting, you got to be in there the whole time, so.
He's also good at giving these pearls of wisdom as well. I can't explain how much I learned from being around Justin.
You're really in trouble when you have a 5-year starting. or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we're talking about a big returner, performer from last year. Kendrick Cuby at Eastern View had a pretty impressive season last year. He's back again. Eastern View looks like they're going to be pretty strong this season again.
Yeah, they're pretty loaded right now. When you talk about Kendrick Cuby back as a big play running back, he can hurt you catching the ball, running the ball, also in the kickoff return game. The quarterback was a sophomore last year, Josh Stallings. He's actually added about 20 pounds and gained 2 inches, so he's about 6'2", 210 right now.
Wow.
And he has an all-state receiver to throw to in Jacob Settle, who's also a factor in the return game. So they have a lot of offensive weapons, and the plus for them this year that they haven't had in years past is their offensive line is intact as well. They have a big kid, Raekwon Carter, 6'4", 310, something like that. So they have the size to go with a lot of that speed that they've always had.
You guys remember the days when it was a good thing if you gained 20 pounds in a year?
Not for me anymore.
Yeah. That's size and hopefully speed, things like that, just amazing. So okay, excellent. How about Caroline? They're looking like they might be a little bit better off this season.
Probably not. They've probably taken a step back. That Coach Antron Yates, he got more than what he bargained for when he accepted that job. When he walked in the door, immediately they lost 5 transfers to different schools, and unfortunately for Yates, 4 of those guys were probably his 4 best players. So.
Yeah, that's not a whole lot you can say.
I think Yates did a really credible job at W&L, bringing that program together and sort of with discipline and at least getting them all on the same page. I think, that's sort of what Caroline needs. Caroline needs a little bit of consistency in the staff and consistency in the program, and then they need to go through that building process.
Yeah, I think that was the disheartening thing for Yates when he came in with really good intentions of installing that discipline and being the guy, and immediately he sees his 1,200-yard receiver transfer and also his star quarterback transfer and a guy he was counting on to be a key running back and linebacker.
Meanwhile, down the road a bit, Mark Fisher at Louisa is stepping into a bit of a challenge there as well.
I think Louisa's not in bad shape. Again, we were talking about the single wing with King George. Here comes Mark Fisher back, big single wing guy. They're going to get back to that mostly exclusively, and it's going to be all the same trademark things. You know, if you saw Louisa and when they made a run through the state tournament, you know, the best year in school history just a couple of years ago, and they're going to get back to doing all those things. They're going to run the single wing. They're going to run the ball. They're going to throw it if you force them to throw it. They're never going to punt, and maybe they'll kick an extra point. It'll be all sort of the trademarks of Mark Fisher. But he's just another guy who, when he gets that thing going, and they're really consistent with it and really good at the few simple things they do, and that can be enough.
They're never going to punt, is it?
Well, it's, you know, if you watch Louisa game, as Fisher will tell you, he said punting is conceding defeat. So, you know, they're not afraid to, you know, in the single wing, their quarterback is sort of in a shotgun position always, and they're not afraid to do things like, okay, it's 4th and 5, let's roll out to the right, and if that guy's running free in the flat, I'll throw it to him, otherwise I'll quick kick the ball away, and we'll do what we can. Okay. Let me know if you see Louisa line up in a punt formation with a kicker 15 yards back to punt the ball, not what they do.
Gotcha.
You know, I think Louisa is solid. You got to take them seriously. Again, maybe not their year for a state title, but certainly a year where they're going to win some games and give some teams some trouble.
I think one problem they're going to have is that Mark Fisher was there for a long time, and guys came through and knew what was expected of them. Yeah. Now they're sort of resetting because he was gone for a while. So, you know, they ran a different offense. So they're going to have to reteach it to kids who didn't learn it as they were coming up. So it'll be a challenge to them. They'll probably be better this year, but this will be the learning year.
It's still got some athletes. Trey Cherry was sort of their do-it-all guy back last year. He's back. You know, he'll be a great weapon. And then they've got 3 or 4 other guys. You know, they hand the ball to 6 different guys a game. Nobody carries it more than 15 or 20 times unless your name is Ron Trey or Todd Shelton. Otherwise, you know, they're going to spread it around. And if they play smart and play disciplined and don't make a lot of mistakes, don't put yourself in 3rd and 15, Louisa can be successful. Yeah.
There you go. Let's take a look at 3A now in Conference 27 and Culpeper. Justin, how's this team look?
I think I like Culpeper to be improved this year. You know, you look at their record last year, and you forget that they forfeited a game to Charlottesville that they won on paper. They won handily. You lose a game to Central of Lunenburg in the last minute on a long touchdown pass. They win either of those 2 games last year, they're a playoff team. They win both of those 2 games. I think that gets them to 5-5, and they're not the 16 seed or the 15 seed. You know, they're somewhere in the middle of the pack, maybe going to a winnable playoff game. They have talent back. I've seen their quarterback. You know, if he's a kid, if they give him time, he's got a good strong arm. He's pretty accurate. I think he can make plays for him if the offensive line gives them time. And I think that's where Ken Wakefield will say our offensive line has to come together, and they have to show they can be good. I think if they do that, they've got weapons at the skill positions. I think Culpeper takes maybe a small step forward, maybe a medium step forward. Maybe not a huge step forward. But
okay. Somewhere less than a huge step forward.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Nathan, how about Spotsylvania? This was actually a playoff team last season.
Yeah, and you know, like Taft was saying with Caroline, you go into a season, you got a lot of young talent. You're really excited about what those guys can do the next year, and then you get hit with a bombshell that some of these guys are leaving. They lost 3 offensive starters, some really key guys to the transfer, and you know, it's like, do you build on that season last year, or do you have to rebuild at this point? It looks like they're going to have to find some new guys to make plays, and it could be another tough season for those guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, they were a playoff team, but I don't think their record was.
They were 3-7.
They were 3-7. So you know,
but,
you would really expect them to build that record this year, but losing talent is just it's the hardest way to do it.
Losing talent before you expect to. So these
you have
were
winnable
not
games.
Seniors
There's winnable games on that schedule, but I think they've got to play really well.
Yeah. Well, here's a team that brings us to a team that played pretty well last year. They played pretty well for the last 3 years. Actually, have made state championship appearances for 3 seasons in a row, and fallen just short of that ultimate ring. James Monroe. Justin, what do you think about the Yellow Jackets?
I think I would be willing to say James Monroe is a playoff team this year. I think that's a limb. Again, I'm willing to make that statement now. The JM probably is a playoff team again this year.
Anyone want to disagree? I don't think so.
You start with Scroggins, who I think with Burris, you talk about returning quarterbacks, Burris at Mountain View, Scroggins at James Monroe. I think those are your two best returning quarterbacks in terms of the traditional drop back passing guys. Scroggins is very good. He was their everything on offense last year, and he's back, can only get better. They've got weapons, from Caroline. They lost Jamal Bevels, who was their very good weapon last year. They pick up Keyshawn Johnson, comes over from Caroline. Caroline's number 2 guy comes over. Kendrick Wilkins is another weapon at receiver. I think their offense, they certainly have the weapons. Missing the running back last year, it'll be interesting, I think, to see who that guy is this year and if that really develops. The running game, I think. I think Coach Sherbet would use interesting adjectives to describe the success of the running game.
I can't imagine that would be the case.
But again, we've seen JM trot out athletes to play running back, and at some point that's going to happen again. I think the big key for James Monroe, you saw it in the state final. They played a Northside team with 2 excellent, outstanding defensive tackles. The offensive line was young last year. It's got to get better again this year. I think there's guys there that can do that, and if they've put the work in the last 8 months or so, I think the offensive line improves. JM is just as good as they were last year, and JM is playing very late into the season, November, December. I think that's where you see JM end up.
And that defense is going to be as strong as ever as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Antonio Wynn Coleman entering his 3rd year now. Really strong linebacker secondary group. So.
Yeah.
To touch on that passing game a little bit, I actually had a chance to talk to Jay Scroggins and Eddie Haynes, their quarterbacks coach. Haynes is raving about what Scroggins is doing right now. They won 2 7-on-7 tournaments in the offseason, which is, it's not the number 1 indication of success on offense, but they are ahead of the game when it comes to that. He's a 3rd-year starter. He says his accuracy is better. He's ready to top his numbers from last year. He was close to 3,000 yards passing, and he was close to 700 yards rushing. I think the kid's going to have a huge year this year, and he's going to be just the big play guy that they need to make another run at that state championship game.
To go back to what Justin was saying, JM's won 4 state titles. Every one of those teams has had a dominant offensive line. That's been the difference between the good JM teams and the state champion, the elite JM teams. That's going to be, again, this year, that'll rely on that.
And the running game. I think you're right. Scroggins primed for a huge year. He was awesome last year. But they were very one-dimensional, especially in the postseason. The running game at times in the postseason last year, and it worked, but they had to simply just set it aside and say, we cannot do this. We're going to put it on Jay's shoulders. You don't want to do that again if you don't have to. I'm sure, especially early in the season, they're going to be fishing for that running game and see if they can get your stretch and get your zone and find somebody that can make those plays happen. Gosh, the schedule is tough again this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, they've got some big boys on the schedule.
North Stafford on the road, Mountain View at home. Those are two biggies. I think they
have to go to Essex. That was a thriller last year.
Yep. Open with Stafford, who again Stafford's been down, but that's a 6A school with a lot of size. And if there's something that JM has to fight to deal with, it's when they're playing teams with size and so on.
They'll see that at the end of the season when they play Cortland as well.
Exactly. Yeah, Cortland at the end of the year. It's a tough road. JM earns their spot in the postseason. I still like them to do it. Like I said, playoff team.
They weren't. I think they would even admit, going through the season last year, they weren't the greatest team. They get blasted by Cortland. All of a sudden, it's like, really, we got beat by Cortland that badly? That just really spurred them on. They make that run in the playoffs. They're one of those classic teams that, they really learn something about themselves as they go, and their identity is really formed there mid-season and beyond. And so this is a team that's we're probably going to see them again build their identity through the first, 5 or 6 weeks.
Well, and the way they schedule, frankly, with how the PowerPoint system works, they're definitely a team that can go 6-4, score enough PowerPoints where you're still in the top quarter of the 3A East in terms of standing. So you're still playing 1 and 2 games at home, and then you're going to get on the road, and by then you've improved. You're playing schools that are more closely your size. You're playing 3A schools, and you're ready for success. I like JM a lot this year.
I don't see them losing a lot of games, by the way. I'm going to go on the record. Okay, we can talk about them being bad early in the season. I don't see JM.
I certainly, I think you look at a lot of those games, and at worst, they're toss-up games. North Stafford and Mountain View. I think if you look at what North and Mountain View have back, and you look at what JM has back, I think you like JM's chances a lot in those games. Last year North had that team where everybody's back and they're loaded. They're going to be good. That's a real tough road for JM. JM gave North Stafford a credible game. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think this year, if you're looking at who's back and who's returning, you like James Monroe there maybe. Yeah. So And again, how the point system works out, when you go and win one of those games against a 5A school, against a 6A school, against a 4A school, your points work out real well, and then you get to a point in the season where let's just keep working and keep getting better for ourselves, and if we lose one, not a disaster.
As long as you're losing it to a higher rank school.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even I got
the
you.
only small school they play is Essex, and they're usually winning 9 or 10 games a year themselves.
That's
so.
true. That's right. Yeah. All right. I guess we all agree then that JM's got a pretty good
Shot to make the playoffs?
good shot to make the playoffs.
I
There
think we
go.
like that. Yeah.
Let's look quickly at the Division I, Conference 43. Colonial Beach, Justin, what do we know about the Drifters?
Colonial Beach, I think the best thing you could say about the Drifters this year, their coach, Scott Foster's been around for a long time, including in their run through the state tournament. He said, this is the fastest defense we've had, including all those teams. Really quick on defense, getting away from the single wing, first time in a long time. Scott feels like they haven't been able to throw it maybe when they needed to, and they want to try something different and see if that opens up. So we'll see. The offensive line, again, you're talking about 20 true varsity players, lots of kids going 2 ways, but Colonial Beach is another one of those teams where, if Colonial Beach only wins 4, it's sort of a down year for them. They're going to find a way, they're going to win the games against the teams that they're better than, and then some of those other teams they're going to be competitive with, and let's see what happens.
Take their chances. All right.
Yeah.
Very good. How about Washington and Lee? They've got a new coach there with the Eagles.
Yeah, Todd Jones, he was he's pretty much a legend down in Tappahannock after had quite a run with Essex, including the 2009 state championship. He's returned from Pulaski to Washington and Lee, and what he's found is a lot of talent there. Just like what he was used to when he played against Washington and Lee as a coach at Essex. They have an outstanding quarterback in Trayshawn Brown, who threw for nearly 2,000 yards last year, and also a couple of young big play receivers. So he's liking what he's seeing so far.
Okay. Awesome. Justin, how about we chat about Fredericksburg Christian real quick as well. They think they've got maybe something going on this season.
They were really strong. When they first started, they opened up, and then their second year, they picked up a bunch of transfers that built their program for several years in a row. Those kids were sort of the key. They made the state championship game, a game they lost to VES, and then those kids graduated. Last year, then they take a step back. This year they've got some transfers coming in. Darius Carter from Spotsylvania is over there. Some of those other guys. John Hall, right, is over there.
Yeah, Blair Lawson from Spotsylvania, big play running back. Also, they have Caroline's, who would have been Caroline's running back, Brandon Braxton, transferred over there. Also, another lineman from Carolina, Isaiah Williams. So they have a nice group of talent there.
Tim Coleman knows what to do with talent.
Yeah.
So FCS, good chance to make a playoff run again, and maybe they're talking about state semifinal, state final again. Maybe it's that kind of team.
Yeah. Well, last year we had some exciting times. Every year it's exciting, particularly with the new playoff format. You get more teams into the playoffs, more opportunities. An exciting season last year, some teams that went deep. We think that there's some chances this year. I tell you what, can you tell me quickly who you think might be a surprise? Who are some sleeper teams that might be able to surprise some folks?
I think
the area?
Culpeper's would be my choice there. I think they were better than we think they were last year. They lost some close games. They played some teams tough. They've got some guys back. I know Coach Wakefield is excited and enthusiastic about them. I think they play a very winnable schedule to get to that 4, 5, maybe 6 wins. And if you get to 6 wins in a 16-team playoff, you're probably going to host a game against a team you're probably better than. Culpeper.
Culpeper. There you go. Anyone else?
I'll go with Mountain View. I think they went 8-4 last year, so I'm not saying that they're going to rise up or anything like that. But I feel like people can look at them losing 17 starters and having all that turnover and say that they might take a dive this year. I don't think it's going to happen. I got a good feel from practice. I think they've got a lot of talent in their program, and I think they're going to surprise some people who think those lost starters are going to make that much of a difference. So.
Okay.
My pick is Washington and Lee. I think that they have a lot back, and they have a veteran coach. And it's not so much they're pretty much a known commodity in 1A, but when they play the King Georges and Spotsylvanias, when they go up to 4A, I think they're going to surprise some people at that level.
Okay, Steve.
I'll go out on a limb with Stafford.
It's
been a while, but they're big and they've got talent back. They've they're going to, if they don't turn the ball over, they're going to dominate the time of possession, trying to shorten the game. I think they've got a chance to be better than 1-9 for sure.
I think the thing with Stafford, what Tommy Bozo told you, it's what the SEC, the Commonwealth District is like the SEC of high school football.
That's what he said.
Right. It's such a tough district, and I think even when we talk at a lot of these teams, the Stafford schools, and even Massaponax and Riverbend, graduated a lot, but you still look at those teams, man, those guys have been good for a long time. They've figured out how to do it. I think the Commonwealth is very competitive, as it's been maybe in a long time. Maybe after Colonial Forge, we'll see.
Yeah. I think Forge is still the class.
Yeah, hard to argue that they aren't the class. Well, I'm going to make a pick as well, as if you don't mind. I think I'll go with Riverbend. They've been 5-5 the last 2 seasons. I think that they're going to be above 500 this year. Maybe get a chance to get into the playoffs. 6-4 might be enough to get them in there. And I think that they're going to be an exciting offense to watch. If nothing else, we'll see how many points they're able to put up. This I've heard it called the Bear Raid attack. We'll see how that turns out. But,
who came up with that?
It should be fun. It was a scoop. I'll give that to you later. But it should be fun to watch it later.
And my other surprise pick then is James Monroe, who I think is a playoff team.